Okay, so here's the second half of chapter 22. Again, highly recommend you watch this video and you read the chapter. There's information in the chapter that I'm not including in this lecture because I'm trying to keep these fairly short. Okay, so okay. Also, now when you finish the paper, realize that your most important paragraph is your introductory paragraph because that draws you in to or draws your reader into the actual paper. Your second most important, I think people tend to not realize this, is your concluding paragraph. I mean, because as I said with the support, studies have shown readers take the first thing and the last thing they read with them. They may not take everything in the middle. So that your concluding paragraph is the very last thing. So you want to make sure you have a strong, effective conclusion. And you have to decide what type of conclusion. There are a number of them. I'm just offering four. So you could expand on the claim. Like this, this is what I've said, and this is furthermore what else goes along with this. You can end with an effective quotation, but please make sure it's very relevant. I've had papers that were fairly good, but the use of quotation as just a throwaway kind of ruined the end of the paper. Uh, if your research paper is dealing with an issue or problem, and you've provided a solution, give some emphasis to that proposed solution and why it's such a great solution. Or you may have a conclusion that's a call to action, that you want people to do something, to take some action in support. All right, what I don't want you to do, please do not do this. Do not include any new material. This will really ruin the grade of your paper. If I see things in your concluding paragraph that haven't been stated already within the paper, this is no longer a concluding paragraph. This is now another body paragraph, and your paper does not have a concluding paragraph, which is a major problem. It will cost you major points. So no new material. You can reiterate anything you've already said, but don't be saying things that you hadn't said already. Don't just trail off. So I got to write 7 pages. There's 7 pages. Good, I'm done. Put a period, right? Make sure you have a strong wrap up. Don't tell your reader what you've accomplished. So don't say, in this paper I have shown, in the same way, and I haven't mentioned this earlier, for your thesis, do not say, in this paper I am going to. Write a good, strong, declarative sentence. That sentence will tell your reader what you're going to do. You don't have to say, in this paper I'm going to, or in this paper I have. If you do your job, you don't have to tell it what you're going to do or what you have done. Right? It's kind of like a heart surgeon saying, well, I fixed your heart. Well, yeah, I'm still breathing. I know you fixed my heart. All right. Don't offer apologies, even if you know you didn't do a good job. I've had people do that. Don't say, I'm sorry, Mr. Prober, I could have written better. I don't know you could have written better. Maybe you wrote really well. Maybe I wouldn't have thought this wasn't that great a paper if you hadn't said it. I apologize. And don't just have a 1 or 2 sentence summary of a complex issue in your conclusion. All right, title. I would be jumping up and down again if we were in class. Your title is the handshake. Your handshake with the writer, the reader. It's your introduction to the paper. Spend some time thinking about your title. It's very important. It's not just a throwaway, right? This is the first thing that draws your reader in. If it's a boring, mundane title, why am I going to read any further? I go, this looks boring, you know. Anyway, so make sure it's entertaining and informative, and make sure it's relative to the actual paper. All right, again, integrating the source, establish the source as a way to introduce your source. Always use the author's name and the title if it adds credence. So if you're writing on some medical issue and he's a doctor of medicine, then go ahead, put Dr. So-and-so. If it's Dr. Phil, who cares? He's not a real doctor, not in any state in this country. But you need to use the first and last name of the author. So John Smith. After you've used the first and last name or Janet Smith, you just use the last name. So once you've used first and last, from then on through the paper, when you refer to the author, you would say Smith. Smith says this. Smith said that. All right. Use tags such as states, declares. Like I said, I'll try to get that sheet up. And try not to have personal opinion statements when just introducing the ideas. Again, this was the reason for doing the summary papers. You want to lay them out objectively, your sources, ideas, and statements. And then, all right, direct quotations, the reasons why you have direct quotations. You want to maintain clarity of the sentence. You want to reveal a weakness in the passage. You plan to discuss the implications of the passage, why the passage is so important. Make sure you always quote accurately. You don't miss up. I mean, I have people all the time like, I know the person didn't write this because they didn't misspell the word, or they weren't writing this grammatically when they have a PhD in something. All right, and if you need to add or change something, use brackets. So this using brackets lets the reader know that this isn't how the original looked. So the original in this would said, in this role, he was successful. Well, if I just give you that, you don't know who the he was. So I have to change the actual quotation and put in Robin Williams. All right. I put brackets there to let you know that is Robin Williams wasn't in the original quote. All right. Paraphrase when you want to use an author's ideas, but not his or her exact words. And when you want to clarify complex ideas with simple language. If you want to interact with a point that the source has made. Oh, so sorry. So one other reason is if you're writing, let's say on a scientific issue, and you understand it, but it's a very complex quotation. Like most people, because they don't have your scientific background, would not understand it. Then you paraphrase. Or, in my case, writing literature papers, if you're using a source, let's say you're writing a paper on Shakespeare and you're using somebody who critiqued Shakespeare play at the time it first came out in the 1600s or 1500s, the language is archaic. You would paraphrase then in order to make the language more modern to make it easier for the reader. Now, make sure you use your words and sentence patterns. Don't copy the original, right? It's all got to be yours. You still have to maintain the sense of the original, though. Don't let things get out of context. Don't be saying things that the author didn't say because you've poorly. Don't plagiarize. This is a research paper. You're supposed to be using other people's works, but you have to document it. You have to give those people credit. So any writings, published and unpublished, any opinions and judgments that aren't your own, any statistics and facts not commonly known, any images and graphics. If you use a photograph, as a way to add some interest in part of the essay, you need to say where that photograph came from and who took the photograph. Any interviews, any letters, and any emails. All right, any public electronic communications, TV shows, movies, sound recordings, and websites. I've had students in my literature classes quote me from one of my lectures. They still have to document it. All right, responding. This is when you're doing your research. Make notes in the margins of sources. I don't know if you'll do it or not. I tended to like to print off my sources. I like to have something in my hand, but I'm old. I mean, I grew up without computers. That's how old I am. My college papers were written on typewriters, right? There weren't even word processors when I was first going to college. All right, so if you're doing this now, you can't do this now because I realize the iPad and also Windows machines have pencils that you can write on, so you can maybe write on it, within an iPad. So, what do you agree with? What do you disagree? Do you find something questionable? Any questions you have about the source? Again, as we've mentioned before, and I'll say it probably at least once or twice more before the semester is over, critique your sources for how accurate they are. Timely. Are these recent enough, depending on what you're writing about? If you're writing on technology, you need the most recent. You're writing on medical issues, you need the most recent information. How thorough was your source in dealing with the topic? How reliable do you think the author is? And is the reasoning sensible? Is it logical? Does this make sense to you? So a lot of Alex Jones, InfoWars rantings don't make any sense to me at all. They're just absolutely unreasonable. And they should be to most people if you've got half a brain, right? And so you want to make sure you're not using people like that in your sources. You want reasonable people who look at facts and can support what they have to say. Again, how current is the source? Thoroughly researched or not? Is it reliable? Is it the reasoning sound and logical? All right, that's what you really need to know when you're looking at your sources. And so I had you do the credible source information or team assignment. Now we'll see how well you can do the second one, which is being assigned this week. All right, that does it for this lecture. With facts that have been validated by other people, even though it was given to them in class that they were taking. Paraphrase, then you paraphrase. I had to put that in so you would understand. You can critique them. Report of whatever it is you were writing.